welcome back to Port Shopping Live. It's Craig here, your port and shopping guide, and I'm standing next to one of my oldest friends in the industry, famous Mike Pearson. Mike, good to see you, my friend. It's really interesting, ladies and gentlemen, that in this industry you can randomly just be in a port and bump into someone in the industry. So I thought I'd get the camera out. I'm going to have a chat with Mike, and you can now start to understand why. For me, without a shadow of a doubt, Bremont is one of the hottest watch brands in the Caribbean. So let's get to know a little bit about yourself, and let's get to know why Bremont is a watch that everyone needs to look at this week in the Caribbean.
Sure. Well, it's great to see you.
And you.
I hope everyone's having a great cruise. I've been in the industry for a while now. I am proudly the director for Bremont here in North America. So not only do I look after the States or Canada, but the Caribbean is very exciting, especially for a brand like us. We get to tell our story in stores like this to about 8 million cruisers. So to see yourself, to meet the guests, and also to train the teams in the stores, we have a wonderful time there. The brand itself is about a decade old. It's owned by two brothers, Nick and Giles English. Wonderful, wonderful guys. I wouldn't tell that to their faces, but they really, really are. They're brothers, they're business partners, they're best friends, and more than anything, they're different. They grew up with their dad, their mum, like we all do, and their dad was a bit different as well. He was a Royal Air Force pilot. He was also an aeronautical engineer, and he loved collecting old cars, planes, boats, and bikes. It's the dream for all boys and toys. For me, I grew up with my dad, and you learn to drive sitting on his knee, but Nick and Giles learned to drive and fly and ride motorcycles or sail boats, not in a privileged way, but in a way where their dad would teach them that in engineering terms, there are some amazing things out there. Jaguar cars, Norton motorcycles, Morgan or Spitfires or Harvards, all that kind of thing. They ended up becoming pilots themselves, and they were actually pilots during a peaceful time, so they were not doing it through combat. They were doing recreations of World War II flights. So for their weekends, that is what they lived for, flying in Harvards, flying in Spitfires. Their lives changed quite dramatically in 1995, and their dad was flying with Nick, who's the older brother, and Giles was in the next field about to go up. Unfortunately, the plane went into a bit of trouble in the formation, and they couldn't get out of a flat spin, and the plane crashed. Nick's dad passed away on impact. Nick broke 30 bones, and he was hospitalized for a year. Now, you imagine being Giles, seeing that all happen. It's a terrible, terrible thing. But what I would say is their greatest passion, or their greatest maybe influence in their lives, was that moment. And instead of taking it in a bad way, they said, well, let's get better. Let's get Nick right. Let's leave a legacy for Dad. And so for Nick and Giles, when you look at a watch like this, it's not just about luxury or making money or for you guys to find something quite beautiful on your wrist. There's so much personality within Bremont. And so in 2002, they decided to make a watch. And in 2007, the first watch came out because they did 5 years of research and development. There's a massive, massive part to play in the world that the Swiss has had on us in the last 50, 60 years. But I truly believe that the industry is not deserved of one country. The Brits had a wonderful part to play, and about 60% of the modern watch you see today was developed in the UK. You think about the American railroad watches or the fantastic pocket watches that the pilots had back in the World Wars, that was America. If you think about all the different trends and fashion trends of Italy, Spain, France, and so for Nick and Giles to be able to bring a little bit back to the UK, which has not happened in the longest time, it was incredibly important. But we also couldn't build the watch the same as the Swiss. Their standard is incredible. But if we do it the same, who would care? And so they set about making a watch which was very, very different. And if you look at the watch when you come into the stores, you'll see how. They're all quite lovely. They're round watches, no different shapes. So when you get to 40, 50 years old, it will still look good. We don't want to build a watch which is fashionable. We just want to build a watch that looks good. But if you're also going to be doing your daily wear, you're in shorts and jeans or t-shirt or you're going adventuring, or maybe you throw on a jacket for formal night, or you go into the office. We want a watch that looks good in the boardroom, but can also go to the top of Everest. Yeah. So all of our steel is hardened the same way that Rolls-Royce hardens a turbine blade. A Bremont watch is 7 times harder than any watch in the industry. Every single piece of sapphire crystal has been treated so there's 9 layers of anti-reflective coating on the front and the back. There's no glare. And instead of having thick cases or bling or diamonds, for us the personality of the watch is in the case. It's a 3-part case, so that beautiful chronometer certified movement is protected. So the movements are perfect, 3-year warranties, but the outside, that's where it becomes very special, and we make sure that movement's protected differently than anybody else.
And again, that's another thing, a great thing about the watch that I love more than anything else is we talk about it being different. I want to talk about now the different models out there at the moment. Right. Obviously, you've got association with Jaguar, which I think is super, super cool. Love. And obviously the Boeing watch. But the number one selling watch that everyone's going crazy about is the MB, the Martin Baker. Yeah. So let's explain to that why that is so popular.
Well, I'll just go back. Jaguar and Boeing, they came to us. I mean, they're synonymous with either quality, engineering perfection, amazing history, or for Jaguar's case, luxury. And they all came about because of what we did with Martin Baker. Now, a lot of you might not be familiar with the name, but we've all definitely seen an ejection seat. Yeah, Martin Baker's been around since the 40s. And it's in 70% of the world's military. Brits, Americans, we all use it. And they're very proud that 7,502 people have pulled that cord, and the seat's never failed, and nobody's ever passed away. It's an incredible statistic. If any accidents do happen, it's either because they're too close to the ground, upside down, or the canopy doesn't open. But the seat always works. So Nick and Giles said to the guys at Martin Baker, you're British, we're British, let's build a watch for the ejectees. And Martin Baker did the smartest thing they could have ever done for us. They pushed us to be better. They said, we will work with you if your watch can survive an ejection. Now, an ejection happens in 0.8 seconds from pulling the cord to full deployment. Now, that is in any condition, hot, cold, salt fog, when you're crashing, when you're vibrating, when you're being pushed out of a plane at any kind of velocity, 30 Gs of pressure, that seat has to work. Now, the mechanics inside of a Swiss watch that you might be knowing of, or our watch in the UK, they're still going to be quite fragile, cogs and springs and wheels. We had to protect that. So the Martin Baker watch is anti-shock and anti-magnetic like nothing built before. If you are an ejectee, you buy it through the military, and it has a very special red barrel. For you and I as civilians, you get orange, green, grey, blue, or bronze, depending on the model. But they're still the same watch. But if you see a guy wearing a red MB, shake his hand, thank him for his service. It's a really special badge of honour. You might have actually seen it on Jimmy Fallon. Jimmy Fallon gave one away to his father-in-law about a year ago on the show, which was great. But for us, it's a very personal thing, and it pushed us to be better. And by doing that watch, the US Navy Testing Pilot School came to us. They're the guys that teach Top Gun how to be Top Gun pilots. Of course. The U-2 squadron, and then the British Royal Air Force. And now about 150 squadrons around the world have about 2,000 of our 8,000 watches we build annually that are just for them. So if someone says, Boeing and Jaguar, we are incredibly proud of that. But by being with Martin Baker and having the seal of approval from the military, it just made us a different brand. Yeah. And I think, And
the one thing I do want to touch on there, which you just mentioned briefly there, you only make 8,000 watches a year. That for me, especially when you're going to buy a really nice fine timepiece, you want to be different. Mm-hmm. You don't want to have the same watch as everybody else has got. And that's another big plus point, I think, for Bremont, and only having that limited edition of amount of watches each year.
Well, there's some big boys out there. We all know.
We know, yeah.
And they can make as many watches in a day as we make in a year. And we've growing. We've always grown. We started off making a few hundred to a few thousand, and now 8,000 for us is incredible. And we have a facility in Henley-on-Thames, which is just outside of London. We make all of our pieces at Silverstone Racetrack. And if you love Formula One racing, that is the home of Formula One. But the people who work with metals there, they're different level. The PhDs who are working with us, so they've given us the building blocks to be bigger. But that means we are still going to be smaller than everybody else out there that you might be familiar with out there in the world. I think the people who told it to us best were the military pilots. They wear the same suit, the same shoes, the same haircut, but if they go to the bar, they don't want to wear the same watch as everybody else. And when you look in a Bremont showcase, you will see a lot of variation. And there's a lot of colours, there's a lot of different dials, and there's a lot of different mechanics, but there is something for everybody. And I will say that if you're a guy, girl, big or small, whatever you're used to, it's a watch which I think I could wear. I've got some good shoulders. If you're more slight or you're used to something a bit different, within our case, we'd like to think there's something for you.
The forthcoming London-Melbourne Air Race is beginning to loom big in the public imagination, and the wife of the Agent General for Victoria names the first new plane to be especially built for the contest. The pilots of this new de Havilland Comet are Mr. C.W.A. Scott and Mr. T. Campbell Black. Mr. Scott is, of course, the former record holder for the route.
Because our job is to get there first, and we think that we have the right type of machine for this particular race.
So in 1934, when the race was announced, there was huge excitement in the aviation industry. But the realization very quickly was that probably only an American transport plane was capable of the distance and the speed necessary to win the race. And then the British press got hold of the fact that no British plane was capable of winning the race either. And that's when Sir Geoffrey de Havilland stepped in and said he would design an aircraft capable of winning. And for £5,000, the asking price, within 3 weeks, 3 orders have been taken for the Comet DH-88.
The race ran from Mildenhall in the UK to Melbourne, Australia, and was a distance of 11,300 miles. And it was a pioneering air race that was going to deliver aviation to the world. And the Comet won in just under 71 hours.
Passing the finishing line at Flemington Racecourse at 200 miles an hour, the Melbourne Air Race winners land at Laverton.
You have achieved such a remarkable triumph for aviation, should be receiving the first of the plaudits that you have so nobly merited from the whole civilized world.
So what was special about this aircraft, this Comet, this DH-88? Well, the first thing was this Gypsy 6 engine, which was very much uprated for its day, together with this dual-pitch propeller. But for the first time in a British aircraft was this retractable undercarriage, which was obviously designed for speed. The wing was spruce ply, which made it immensely strong and very, very fast. And then what you also had for this 2,900-mile range, these 3 enormous fuel tanks, 2 of which were sitting right in front of the pilots up there. So flying this 220-mile-an-hour aircraft would have been Charles Scott in the front and Tom Campbell Black in the back. Both of them would have been flying at various times, and there were dual controls to enable that to happen. But interestingly enough, there's only one set of instruments, and that was in the front of the aircraft. So it'd been very, very hard to see from the back. But we'll be making 282 stainless steel DH-88 watches and also 82 rose gold. The 43mm case houses a GMT movement, and parts of the original Comet aircraft are integrated into the rotor of the watch as well. So there's no shortage of inspiration and passion that's gone into the watch for one of the greatest air races of all time.
As with all our limited edition watches, a percentage of all the revenues goes to charity, and in this case it's the Shuttleworth Trust, keeping these wonderful original aircraft in true flying condition.